What's going on, everyone? Welcome back along to the channel. It's that time of the week once again, and we are looking forward this time to the penultimate round of Super Rugby. That's right, it's time for the round 18 preview of the Super Rugby competition. Now, this round is a pretty big round because there is a lot of, well, I guess, direct ramifications of what's going to happen from these matches for teams looking to get into playoff positions. Of course, getting into the best position possible, highest up the ladder you can be, playoff spots, all those are on the line. That's what we're going to be really targeting today as to what effect these games could have on those sides. But first things first, before we get into the matches for round 18, let's have a look at the two things we always kick off with. Of course, the yellow cards and, of course, the SuperBru leaderboards. Yes, we'll be getting back to those two leaderboards first, though. Let's have a look at the yellow card count for the 2018 competition. Now, this is the area of the season we're actually going to catch up because this season actually has two more rounds than the previous year. So, currently, right now, we're sitting at where the season would have been stopped, and the season ended, the regular season, that is, on 140 yellow cards. Now, we've still got this round, round 18 and 19, still to go. So with that, we sit currently on 83 yellow cards, and we still have a couple of rounds still to play. So, I mean, it's unlikely we're going to get, 57 yellow cards in a couple of rounds. But, I mean, just goes to show the change that the season has undergone. Okay, so let's move on for that and have a little look at what you all like to really compete for. And that is the SuperBru leaderboard and predictors and the fantasy league as well. We're having a look at both of these leaderboards this round, and we can see on the predictor, the big one, the one everyone's chasing with a whole pile of you guys competing, it is still the driving maul leading the way. Yep, he's still doing it. I don't know how, but it's up to you guys to stop him. He is at the top, as you can see, on 96.83 points, trailing him Antipodal 49er, still there, but less than 2 points behind. No, he's just over 2 points behind on 94.75. Then another 2 points back is 3 Crowns won. I mean, Paul, you're going to have an absolute shocking round to lose this top spot the way we are going at the moment. It is pretty close back there, though, of our Nut 07 jumping in, and just 0.08 behind further than that is Owen Davis 01. But how about this Smarty Highlanders fan actually picked up the wooden spoon from this round, which is just unheard of. A player in the top 10 getting the wooden spoon sees him drop down a couple of spots. Let's go down the leaderboard here to where the real action is taking place. We've got the yellow cap winner, Magpie. Well done, sir. You take the yellow cap. But not my yellow cap, my sir. This one is all mine. And you can't take that away from me. I always almost forget it until I talk about the yellow cap winner, and it's back. It's all back right here for me right now. So, well done, Magpie. Good work by you to get that yellow cap on your head. Let's go further on down the leaderboard. Here we go. The action. Now, where is Brett? Brett is actually rocketing up. The lowlife is rocketing up the leaderboard up to 35th now. Very nicely played, Brett. You are doing very, very well. And you are, I've gone down one. Unbelievable to be way down in 42nd. That is an embarrassment, absolute embarrassment. Brett is sitting, well, less than 2 points in front. So, I mean, not unbeatable. So, looking in these last few rounds to make the big comeback, which has really gone pear-shaped in these last couple of weeks. The other players you can see all trailing down the bottom here. I mean, I'm almost about halfway, aren't I? The halfway point from all these guys down here as well. So, could be worse, but I mean, I tell you, it could be a lot better. Okay, so let's switch things over now to the fantasy leaderboard, which we didn't cover last week, so I'm very sorry about that. I didn't forget to include it in, but here we go. Here it is for you all, the fantasy team leaderboard for the season so far. And since I last covered it before the June break, not much has changed. Sneaky Toilet Actions are still sitting up the top with a nice little lead of, what you say, almost 140 odd points before it is B Coventry's Giant Philanthropist who sit in second. Grant Irahama's Infallible Mules is sitting in third. And then we have him. He's there. Look where he is. MFCFO's Blues. This guy, he's good at fantasy team predicting, isn't he? He's sitting in fourth. He's doing very, very well. And Yalmato's Outstanding Dinosaurs has gone up one spot into ninth with that thing, the yellow cap, firmly on his head. Haven't looked too much about where everyone else is on the leaderboard. Got a little bit of movement around the 20s. It's pretty solid there before we get to the All Flakes. There they go. Look at that. Sitting in 33rd position, which I'm not too upset about because I'm ahead of these guys. Yep, that's right. It's Brett's team, the Western Sharks, who are 100 and... No, not even 100. Only about 40 points behind. Quick maths. Not doing me too well there. So the Sharks sitting another 40 or so points behind and 2 spots behind as well. So hopefully we can keep that one with a bit of a gap between myself and Mr. Brett. Right, looking through the rest, where's the wooden spooner? It's the guy at the bottom. Blues for Days hasn't even jumped up a point yet, so bit harsh to give it to him. But, you know, you've got to have a team. Why do you sign up for a fantasy league and not even make a team? Just absurd. But there we go. There is your yellow card count. There is your fantasy team leaderboard. And, of course, your predictions leaderboard. The target is out. Beat the driving maul and make my life a lot easier for the next few months until Super Rugby starts again. Congrats to the yellow cap winners. Very well done to you guys. But, of course, you're not going to take the one off my head. Let's get into why you're really here. Super Rugby predictions, which go on by my leaderboard and positioning. You probably shouldn't take my advice. Okay, folks, so the round kicks off on Friday night, where the Crusaders will be playing the Highlanders at, listen to this, Wyatt Crockett Stadium. Yeah, that's right. They're renaming the stadium for the veteran, playing his 200th game of Super Rugby. Now, let's just start with that, shall we? Quite an incredible feat it is from Mr. Crockett to get to this position where he is up there. Well, no, he's not up there. He is one of the greatest players of Super Rugby level. To play this amount of matches is just ridiculous. We talk about the guys on 120, 100 even is a pretty big monument to get to, but to make this far, double that, 200 games, well played, Mr. Crockett. Never been your biggest fan or anything like that, but to do this, to get to this position, and to have this many caps to your name, you've got to say this guy is a legend of Super Rugby. He won't be starting the match though. He is coming off the bench, and we have a couple of lineups for the first couple of games, so it's going to be good to look at those first and to really break these sides down. Another thing for the Crusaders here is that they have the All Black captain Kieran Reid back in the starting lineup. He will be starting at number 8 for the Crusaders this weekend against the Highlanders, which is sure to be not only a big boost for the Crusaders, but also for All Blacks fans. Of course, some do not like him as captain or do not like his position in the squad, but to like it or lump it, he is the All Black captain, and he is a very inspirational and, you've got to say, a very impactful player as well when he is fit and rearing to go. So it's great to see him back in the number 8 jumper in the red and black of the Crusaders. Now remember, the Crusaders had the bye last weekend as well, so they are really, really fresh. But you've got to say, this is a team that really probably took the biggest hit, especially of New Zealand sides, when it comes to All Black duty as well. So these guys probably deserve that little bit of a rest, but you've got to say, this is where you've got to question the team they're playing up against them, where you see Crusaders get a nicely timed bye here. The Highlanders got 2 in the first 6 or 7 weeks of the competition, where they were out-byed now. They're all done when it comes to byes. So you've got to look at that and say, are the Crusaders a little bit, someone's obviously going, wow, these guys are going to have about 15 All Blacks in the squad. They probably need another week off. Irrelevant, completely irrelevant, but nevertheless, that is the way the draw has been done. Not here to criticise Sanzar in today's video, but it happens every single time. As for the Highlanders, well, you all know what happened in Fiji last weekend, don't you? The Chiefs absolutely run rampant for 40 minutes before the Highlanders did claw a little bit of a way back, but down 42-0 at halftime. No one comes back from that, really, and you've got to say it was a pretty dreadful trip for the home team in that match, the Highlanders. that did not take any real advantage from that. Their team, there's a bit of injury cloud over Squire for this match, so whether he actually does start is, it's yet to be known. But aside from that, the team still remains pretty strong. There was a change with David Lee going out of the 23, and instead coming in will be Richard Buckman starting on the side. The Barracuda is back. That combination in midfield, though, I really want to see how this one unfolds. We've seen Anton Leonard-Brown versus Rob Thompson. I think Thompson did himself no injustice whatsoever. He had a great game. Today, well, this weekend, I should say, he's going to be up against Jack Goodhue from the Crusaders. Ty Ward, another one who's outperformed his expectation. He's up against Ryan Crotty. So the Crotty-Goodhue partnership up against the Warden-Thompson from the Highlanders. Big competition in the back three as well. And you've got guys that possibly have been, should be, or could be in the future All Blacks as well. You're talking about George Bridge, the future guy that a lot of people thought should have been there this year. You've got Tamani Valu, who's been there before, and of course David Havili, much of the same for him. Up against, Waisaki Naholo, doesn't he need a big game, being pretty average in recent months? Ben Smith, always Mr. Consistent, and how will Richard Buckman come up against Tamani Valu? Should be a good matchup for those guys as well. But many of you will probably see the matchup in the back row is somewhere these two sides will be decided on. Squire, Lynchies, and Whitelock up against Bedwell, Curtis, Todd, and Reed. That is a mouth-watering prospect for rugby fans around the globe. This game's going to go one of two ways. The Crusaders, I think, are either going to dominate it and the Highlanders really won't get over that post-June slump, or the Highlanders are going to turn up and they're going to push them all the way. Remember, the Highlanders did beat the Crusaders earlier on in the season as well. It went Highlanders, then the Hurricanes. Bang, bang, Crusaders lost a couple in a row. Not often that happens. Can they do it again? It's going to be pretty tough to see it happen, and I think the way they played in their last match won't give them confidence. Extra travel they probably didn't need to have. Now they've got to go to Christchurch and really step it up another gear. I'm going to pick the Crusaders to win this one. I just think all that rest and all this experience, international players, there's just so much at the Crusaders, and they are a team that come right at the right time as well. So you've got to say they are well and truly favourites to pull this one away. You look at the table, which I mentioned is something we're going to cover a lot through these matches. Crusaders sit top. They are 9 points ahead of the Hurricanes, who also choked last weekend. Highlanders quite a wee way down now as well. You see them down in 4th position in the New Zealand Conference, but overall they still only sit 6th, with the conference leaders from South Africa and Australia the only team actually above them outside of the New Zealand Conference. So that is something, when you look at it, that you say shows how weak the other conferences are, when you've got the team 4th in New Zealand still sitting 6th overall. So looking into that playoff spot, they are only 1 point behind the Chiefs, so they'll still be looking to push forward and put in a good challenge to push those Chiefs down, or possibly if the Hurricanes keep folding like they have done the last couple of rounds, they could also be under jeopardy. But I don't think the Highlanders will do it. Like I said before, Crusaders should canter away with this one. I've got them by 8 points. We cross across the ditch and we go to Australia, to Suncorp Stadium, where the Reds are in action against the Rebels. Now, this one has a lot riding on it as well. Of course, the Reds going back home after losing to the Blues in the colour of the battle of the colours, I should say. And of course, the Rebels went down that close one to the Waratahs. That was a really big decider as well for the Australian Conference. Straight away, we look at the Australian Conference when we look at the two teams here, and there's still a lot to play for here for the Rebels especially. The Reds, however, they are 10 points behind the 3rd placed Brumbies, and they of course sit in 4th. You look at the overall table, and the Reds are actually 2nd from bottom. When you look at it and say the Reds have probably been one of the more impressive or most improved Australian teams, yet they sit just 5 points above the Sunwolves, you got to say overall this season has not been a raging success. The Rebels, on the other hand, they sit right on the cusp of the top 8. In fact, they are 8th, and they've got a big challenge here. They're 3 points ahead of the Sharks, who have come back pretty strongly, you got to say, after the June break as well. But they're only, 3 points behind the Jaguares as well, who are in hot form. So there's a lot that could happen there in that edge of the playoffs. Of course, in Australia, there's still a lot to go on there. I mean, the Waratahs lead, although they beat them last week. The Rebels are only 4 points behind. So a big performance here over the Reds could see the Rebels do possibly the unthinkable and still overtake the Waratahs. And of course, the Waratahs have their game to play much later up against the Sunwolves. So you'd expect them to clean that up. But the way the Sunwolves have played lately, is anything really a guarantee these days at all? So you look at these two sides. We've got the starting lineups, these two teams. So that is a real big bonus here. We can actually talk about that. But I think the real battle, and possibly the bit that's going to be the most interesting to watch, is going to be the front row. When you've got JP Smith, playing Omosa and Tupou lining up for the Reds up against Faulkner, Rangi and Ainsley. You've got to say the Reds have definitely got the one up there on their Australian counterparts. You've got to look at this whole Reds team, and there's a lot to like about the sides. Rodder and Douglas in the second row, Timu Smith, Higginbotham in your back row. That's a damn good pack. That is a really, really good pack. You probably say where they lose out here is in the back line. There's not much experience. There's not much of a calm, cool head throughout their whole side. John O'Lansky starts at fullback, which I've talked about already. I do like that because it gives Hamish Stewart the chance to start at 10. And I'm a big fan of when you've got a situation like this, Lance is away, your season is over, you've got to give your future a chance. So I'm happy that Thorne has said, we've got to give this guy some time. He was under pressure quite a bit last week against the Blues, and I think that's, I was worried was going to put them on the thought of putting him out of the team or back at fullback or something like that. I'm talking about Stewart. I'm glad to see that they've kept the faith and kept Stewart at 10. The problems, though, are outside him. When you've got the likes of Nabuli, Paiawa, Patera, Dungunu, those sorts of guys, they don't pass. They don't create for others. They create for themselves. And you said it's a good thing to have a couple of those sort of guys in there that can spark and nothing. I'm talking like a Naholo or the likes of a Bridge, Havili. Those sort of guys can spark nothing. Talking about the game we just looked at. But this sort of team will have guys that can just bang through something and they'll score a try themselves. You don't have a guy that is going to create, which I think that is where Stewart's got to come into play. He has to be the guy to bring this team forward and create the space for these blockbusting players outside that just need the opportunity. They can be dangerous, but this is where I think the Rebels are going to really get one over them. Much better team all round. Experience, that's a big thing, I think. Experience is the key word here. When you got the likes of Hodge, Kurabiti, Meeks, English, Maddox, Haylett Petty. They are big, big names. And, I mean, yes, they didn't get the results against the Waratahs last round, but that is a good side that definitely pushed them all the way. And you could argue that maybe the Rebels deserved to win that game. So it is a big question mark about their one. Are they good enough to top this pool? You've got to say, though, one thing more than others, they are good enough to win this game. They're going to get a bit bumped around, I think, in the pack, but in the back line, they should run rings around this young, inexperienced Reds back line. So that's going to be my pick for game number 2. The Reds to go down, I should say, to the Rebels. I'm with the Rebels to take this one out by 4 points. Game 3 of the weekend sees the, rampant Chiefs up against the Brumbies. Now, well, let's talk about the Chiefs first. What a half of rugby they played in Fiji, which that has to be the first thing that you think about when you look at this Chiefs team at the moment. The ability to replicate that is going to come down a long way to whether this team can accomplish much, much more for the rest of the season. As we talked about already, we looked at the Highlanders. The Chiefs are right there. They're there or thereabouts, sitting in 5th. So a lot on their side here that they could actually be a team that could actually go somewhere in the playoffs. But we talk about how good the Chiefs were. Let's back it up a bit. Let's back up the bus. Remember what happened to the Brumbies? They actually beat the Hurricanes. Now, the Chiefs are good. The Brumbies had to grind out something ridiculous to get that result against the Hurricanes. That is no mean feat. 3 losses in a row now for the Hurricanes will not be a happy camp for them to be in. So we look forward to this game with 2 winners. Of course, it is at home. It's a Saturday night game. So we are seeing FMG Stadium, Waikato, they call it. What a silly name. Waikato Stadium to host this one. The Chiefs are obviously the home team for this game. So, two teams that will be high on confidence, two teams that know they can win, and especially for the Brumbies to know that they can actually win against a New Zealand opponent, which is something that, I mean, you know how this season has gone on. All that time it took, finally, are we going to see an Australian win? Yes, we did. Now we've got a few, in fact. So it's becoming maybe these teams start to get a little bit of belief that they can actually do it. In New Zealand, it's a little bit different. So to come over here to Waikato Stadium is going to be a bit tougher than if they were playing over at GIO, for instance. So we look at the table, which really has to be the biggest thing about this game. The Brumbies are actually out of contention as it currently stands, and that is going to probably be their season as well, especially considering where they sit with the Rebels in 8th position. So the Rebels sit there on 35 points, and the Sharks are right next to them on 32. The Brumbies further down on 29. So it just goes to show you that victory over the Hurricanes was massive. Now, it has a huge effect on this team as well to go to 6 wins. That puts them up, it just pushes them up away from the Stormers and the Bulls and the Blues, who are all floundering around the bottom of that table. And it puts them up into an almost reckoning. If they get 2 bonus point wins in their last couple of games, they could possibly come into contention. But you look at what the Brumbies have to deal with. Of course, the Chiefs are what they have this week. And then they go to Sydney, where they will face possibly the Australian Conference winners at that point, which will be the Waratahs, if they can hold out for the rest of the season. They sit there currently. If they can do that, they've got to beat the Brumbies as well. So the Brumbies have a tough run in, and you'd look at that and the sensible man would say the Brumbies season is done. They can play spoiler here, and against the Chiefs, they can spoil a lot. This Chiefs side, if they do go down and don't take any points, they could go behind the Highlanders, they could go behind the Jaguares, and I mean, unlikely, but if the Rebels win by about 60 points and the Chiefs lose by about that, they could go behind them as well. They could drop down as low as possibly 8th if the Rebels put in a thumper. Unlikely, yes, I know. What is likely is that the Highlanders and the Jaguares, if they both pick up wins, will go above a Chiefs side with a loss. So a lot riding on the line here for this Chiefs team, and you've got to look at them and say they have to produce a must-win result here. The Brumbies, they're a banana skin at this stage, and that's all they've really got to offer this competition. But the likes of Pocock running around, he is a guy that can dictate the flow and structure of a game. So the Chiefs will need to be at their best. You took them the likes of Sam Cane, really needs to come into his own with his back row buddies. They've got to play a brutal game here. And it's going to be a big test too, because Cane and Pocock are the sort of guys that you're looking ahead for when it comes to Bledisloe and rugby championship matches later on in the year. So a lot to look at in this game. It should be an alright little matchup, but I do expect the Chiefs to probably do this one fairly nicely, and I do have them winning it by 11 points. What do they call that in bingo? Legs 11? Yeah. That was a terrible reference, wasn't it? Absolutely terrible reference. Okay, we're 3 games in. Let's go with the rest of them. We've got 4 more to go, and we go in New Zealand still. We're checking across to Westpac Stadium. It's interesting to note too, before I do go on, that Chiefs game is at 5 o'clock New Zealand time, so it's almost an it's almost an afternoon game, I should say. And for Australians, it will be very early. It'll be early afternoon, 1, 2 o'clock, which is, 2 or 3 o'clock, I should say, which is horribly early to be watching rugby, especially on a Saturday. I mean, drink a beer, watch rugby, stuff everything else. Great excuse to do nothing this weekend. Right, let's move on. Westpac Stadium, Hurricanes, Blues. I mean, you could say this is what the Hurricanes need. They need a victory. That's what they need more than anything. And to play the Blues, who are one of the worst performing side, 3rd last, just 22 points, way out of contention. Their season is done. But what a banana skin this could possibly be. Yes, it is at home at Westpac. Will make a slight bit of a difference. I mean, the Blues only won their first game at home last round, but they could pick it up with 2 in a row. Is it possible? You've got to say, with the run that the Hurricanes are on, you say their confidence can't be that high. You've got to wonder, this is pre-lineup being named, are they going to go back to full strength? Are we going to see the Barretts back? Obviously, Savia is injured. That is Artie Savia is out. But there's a couple of guys missing. Brad Shields of Red is set to play his 100th cap for the Hurricanes, so we will see the Englishman. I mean, we can call him that, can't we? The Englishman? I mean, he's capped for England. He's back anyway for the Hurricanes. Whatever you're going to call him. He is back and set to play his 100th cap. He's only halfway to Crockett, so you got a long way to go, Brad. You're only halfway to good old White. So for the Blues here, let's talk about the Blues. Now, good win against the Reds. Yeah, it was a good win for them. If they were playing a better side, you got to say they probably would have gone down that one. They just don't seem to be complete. They don't seem to put things together, and they rely on, well, both of the Ioannis, to be fair. Now, a lot of talk about where they were going to go during the week this week, but they have a pretty sure re-signed or about to re-sign with the Blues, which is good for the Blues, but makes you wonder how those guys must have thought when teams like the Hurricanes were keen on signing them. They could have looked at that and gone, well, we could play for the Hurricanes here, mate. Should we go? Like, you'd say they would have probably liked to, wouldn't they? But I look at this game and I see if the Hurricanes do pull out all the stops, if they throw Garden Bishop to the Garden, then they will certainly be favourites for this game. They look pretty abysmal against the Brumbies last round, so they've got to pick up a long way from that. Could have easily won that game. I mean, it was pretty close after all that. They only come away, 24-12. Yeah, it's not really that close, is it? It was a pretty convincing win for the old Brumbies right at the end there. So, a lot to be done here for the Hurricanes if they're going to get back on that horse and back to winning ways. They do, of course, sit fourth. They are the top team outside of the conference winners. So pressure goes on them. Now, we talked about the Chiefs and what they could lose if they do not win their match. Now, what they could gain if they win is that top spot outside the conference winners. They are 4 points behind the Hurricanes. If they pick up a point here, or a win here, I should say, with a bonus point, they could go whoop over the Hurricanes and sit in that fourth spot. A lot of it comes down to who you want to play. Either way, the Hurricanes and the Chiefs need to look at this and go, home quarterfinal. That's the big thing. That is majorly the big thing. They will most likely, as it stands right now, play each other with 4 versus 5, but it will be 4, of course, at home. So a lot riding on this for these sides. They want to get the best position possible going in to these playoffs, and that is what it all comes down to. If you can scrape away a home performance or a home match, that is going to be crucial towards you going further in this tournament. I think the Hurricanes are going to come out all guns firing though. They've got to. They've got no choice now. It's 2 rounds to the playoffs. They've got to get everyone on the same song sheet. That is critically crucial, and they can't afford to let another game slide. They need to get those W's swimming back in very quickly, and it's got to be at the expense of the Blues. They cannot afford to let the Blues steal this one. It will be an upset of the ages, and Tana would be celebrating and popping a few bottles of wino. I could imagine that one as well. I'm going to go Hurricanes by a fairly big margin as well. 15 I'm going by Canes to pick up the victory. Right, a few games still to go. Waratahs, Sunwolves. I mean, gee, this could be interesting, isn't it? Allianz Stadium is where this will be played out, and we'll be following the Hurricanes Blues game. Now, you look at recent form as well from this, and the Sunwolves, well, they beat the Bulls, didn't they? It was in Singapore, so a home match, I guess you can say, for the Sunwolves. But victory, isn't it? It's victory for the Sunwolves, who now, believe it or not, how many do they have? How many, trivia question? They got 3. 3 wins. Reds 4, Blues 4, Bulls, Stormers only 5. And the Sunwolves, they've got to look at this and say, we can end our season on a cracking high. Imagine the boil over that they could create if they beat the Waratahs. Now, the Waratahs think that they're sailing plane high and flying high as well. Now, this could quickly come unstuck for them because the Rebels are still right on their butts. So they've got to really stay true here and stay on the winning course. They played pretty well against the Rebels. They were pushed, though, extremely hard. The question for me on this one is whether the Sunwolves are actually going to turn up outside of Japan or Singapore or their home venues, as they call them, over there. That's going to be the big question, and I think the Sunwolves side if they play their best team, their best players, and to their potential, they can threaten almost any side in this competition, especially at home. On the road changes things a bit, where I think that this is where they'll possibly come unstuck. But it'll be good to see where they are at this position. We said the same about the Jaguares, who we'll talk about soon. But I mean, away matches means nothing to those boys anymore. They do not care where they play at all. So Sunwolves, I mean, you got to give them a fair stab of it. Unfortunately, we don't have lineups named for this game either, or the remaining matches. I would like to see who they would put in. Resting a few Japanese players recently. Are they going to bring those guys back in? And that does definitely help their performance, having those top-level Japanese guys in there. Interestingly enough, for the Sunwolves, after they play the Waratahs in Sydney, they then go to Brisbane, where they will play the Reds at Suncorp. So a double away match to end this season, and it probably will end this season completely as well when they sit down the bottom. But how good would it be for the Sunwolves to not be below the Reds? I mean, if they lose this one to the Waratahs, but if they go into that game 4 or 5 points behind the Reds, it is there. The chance is there that they could topple the Queensland Reds. Now, the Waratahs, we talked about them, but they've got to look out for the Rebels. That's a big thing for them. And I think they're just going to be too determined, too desperate. Home ground advantage is going to be big for the Waratahs as well. And for that reason, I have the Waratahs winning, but not by a huge margin like we've seen the Sunwolves go down by in the past. I'm going to go Waratahs by just 9 points. So inside single figures. Hopefully, though, we see a good outing by the Sunwolves with a couple of games left to go in Australia. Right, we go to South Africa for the first time in round 18, where the Bulls are in action against the Jaguares. That's right, yes, the Bulls against the Jaguares. Now, look at what happened last round. The Bulls, of course, we've already talked about it, went down in a screaming heap to the Sunwolves. Yes, the Sunwolves. Oh, man. Great victory for the Sunwolves, but disarray on the Bulls' part after such a promising start to their season all those weeks ago. Where are they now? Pretty much where everyone expected them to be as well. The poor old Bulls down there in 12th, just 5 wins. They're not looking too flash, are they? Down there with the Stormers, who I thought would do better. This Bulls side has improved, but they're still streaks away from returning to the former glory that this side can offer. As for their opponents, the Jaguares, well, I mean, let's stop the clock here and just go back to their recent form over the last few rounds. Of course, last round they did beat the Stormers 25-14. That was a home game at Buenos Aires, so they definitely played on their side. But, of course, before that, they took out the Sharks 29-13. Before that, of course, the mighty Jaguares smashed the Bulls. Before that, however, the mighty Jaguares were in New Zealand and they took out the Chiefs. That was amazing. And we thought after they beat the Blues the week before, that was an anomaly. But no, they were already on a rampaging run, because the week before that, they beat the Brumbies. And it just went on forever, because the week before that, they beat the Rebels. These were in Australia and New Zealand, people. That is how good this team is going at the moment. The last time they lost was the 8th of April, when they lost to the Crusaders 40-14 in Buenos Aires. A phenomenal run. Have not lost since round 8. So that is 9. That is 10. What are we up to? This is round 18 regardless. So that is almost 10 rounds that the Jaguares have gone undefeated. Of course, they didn't win all those games. Of course, they didn't play in round 16, which is the Australia-New Zealand conference to make up for the South African one. And of course, they had the bye in there as well. But regardless, they have not lost since round 8. And you've got to say, you put them up against the Bulls, who have been atrocious recently as well. Of course, they lost that last game to the Sunwolves, which is pretty terrible. But before that, they went down to the Brumbies in Pretoria, 38-28. That is their fortress. That is where they love to play, and that is where they dominate at Loftus. They have not done that at all. They did go down. Of course, we talked about too the Jaguares already in round 14. So that is big. That is what the Jaguares will be looking at. There was at home for them though. But knowing that they thrashed them by 30 points on their own home turf, that's got to be a massive confidence booster for this Jaguares side going into this game. They are looking a class above this season. And let's talk about their credentials to get into the playoffs. They are 7th. We've talked about it a little bit already. 3 above the Rebels, and they are only 2 behind the Highlanders and 3 behind the Chiefs. That is a good season. They are in for a chance here to really rattle the cage of these sides. They're showing they can win in Australia. They're showing they can win in New Zealand. They can win at home. They can win in Africa. It doesn't matter. This side really is coming of age. And it's about bloody time too, isn't it? It's really about time. The yellow card talk is gone. That silly things they do, the headspace, the mental side of the game, they've sorted it. Coaching? Maybe. Let's not speculate. All we know is this team is performing extremely well, and I want to back them. I want to back them 100%. I want the Hug Warriors to make it safely into the playoffs and really start to cause some mayhem. I'm going Hug Warriors to beat the Bulls by 3 points. That's right, just 3. Not much, but it's enough. Let's be fair. That is all it's going to take. They could do it, and they could really cement their place. 4 points here is going to go a long way to their hopes. They go into the low 40s. I say the Rebels, they're struggling. If they're going to get to 40, they should have it in the bag. Hug Warriors, come on! Let's get in those playoffs. It will be a great occasion, and I hope that they get the job done. Right. 1 game to go, as always. Yeah, we always go on far too long. Whatever. Deal with it. That's why you're here. You know why you're here. We are here to preview Super Rugby, of course. And 1 game left. Stormers, Sharks. We don't do things by half. We do a whole hog, and we do the full-on preview of each and every game. So I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Let's get into this final match of the weekend. Stormers, Sharks. Contrasting thoughts on these two sides after the last weekend. Of course, we've seen the Stormers go down to the side we just spoke of, the Hug Warriors. But on the other scale, the Sharks become the first South African team to beat the Lions in 2 years. What a record. What a record that is. Now, we look forward to our opening game of round 18, where the Crusaders haven't been beaten at home in 2 years as well. So is this going to be a double bang bang in 2 weeks? We're going to see 2 big records broken? We can only wait and see. But Sharks, is this finally the Sharks that we've been waiting for? We've been just demanding, we've been wanting to see. We know how good the Sharks team is. Man, at the start of the season, the Sharks were it. They were the glorious side. They had all the players. They had the ability, the creativity, the finishing, the power, the grunt, the oomph in the front row. They had everything they needed to really carve out a fantastic season. But they have been nothing short of disappointing this year. So, sad hopes for the Sharks here. And when you look at where this season stands right now, they are sitting in 9th position. Still within a chance here to attack. If they do beat the Stormers and the Rebels do fall away, we could see another African team jump up into that top 8, which I'm a fan of the Sharks, okay? I'm also keen to see the Rebels make the playoffs. Just for the sake of that, they've come through all this change with the Western Force, all these players coming in. It'll be a great little fairy tale story, wouldn't it, for the Rebels to make it? But I do like what the Sharks offered. And remember them last season in the playoffs. They shot themselves in the foot, but they played a fantastic first 40 or so minutes where they should have booked themselves a place in the semi-final. They could have been, well, one of the best improved sides last year, but they haven't really built on that enough. Now, they're up against the Stormers. Now, the Stormers are a team that don't win away from home. They don't win, they win at home normally, but recent form hasn't done them any justice at all. Of course, the last round before we had the June international break, they lost their first home game to the Lions. It was only by 3 points, but that could have been the crippling of them, and especially when they went away to face the Hug Warriors, who in the form of their life, it was a bit of a tough call. But now they come back home. Does that change things for the Stormers? Are they going to reach that next level? Are they going to come back to that home form, back to that home play, back to when they were actually a good winning side? That's the question you got to ask, and it's hard to pick because are the Sharks going to bring in that same performance from last week where they beat the Lions? Can they bring that back? Can they replicate that? Because we know the good things we've seen from them this season so far, they haven't brought in, week out. It's been good, and then they've been, oh, it's back to the normal Sharks. They're crap again. Oh, here they are. 2 rounds later, the Sharks are back. Yeah, nope, they're crap again. So I'm hesitant at what the Sharks are going to prove here. They would have had a good little mid-season breakaway of the non-international players to build up their game. But you've got to question when the Stormers are going to improve going home, the Sharks are going to possibly turn the tap back to cold. You just never know what team's going to show up. I'm a big fan of both of these sides. I've been watching the channel for a while. You'd know that. The Stormers have a lot of quality players. But when I look at the table, I've got to back the Sharks because I think that this top 8 leaderboard could get really interesting going into the final round. We have the Sharks and the Rebels, the Hug Warriors, all winning. Highlanders and the Chiefs even, all pulling up victories. We could see a big push up from those sides in the outside playoff positions, really fighting and scrapping for those 5 spots. So that's really what I want to see, a big old scrap. If we do see a split come in between 8th and 9th, that is going to, of course, ruin that last round where we could see some awesome action happening all over. But overall, I do think, and I do wish that we see a consistent display from the Sharks, but I don't think it's going to be easy. I don't think it's going to be a big win. It's going to be close. It's going to be tight, and I'm picking the Sharks by just 2 points. How will they come across? How will they do it? It's going to be an interesting one. Can they put another good display together like they did against the Lions? Is motivation going to be a factor? We won't find out till this weekend. It could be a big thing for them, but they need to back it up if they're going to keep alive that slim chance they have of making the playoffs for 2018. Righty-ho, let's leave it there, folks, because I think we've gone on more than long enough, as per always. Yep, a nice 3/4 of an hour video just to top you up heading into your weekend as well. Let me know your thoughts on these matches in the comments below. Of course, add me up on Twitter and have a good chat in the lead up to this weekend. And of course, for match days coming up in a couple of days as well. If you do enjoy the videos, you want to see more, hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up as well if you're enjoying these videos. And I'll see you for plenty more rugby action in the coming days. We've got all sorts of goodies coming up as well. More subscriber series, more Nathan Nichols. Of course, we're going to have more from Super Rugby in the coming weeks as well. So stay tuned. Do not go anywhere. And I'll see you all very, very soon. Thanks for tuning in and watching. And as always, take care.